The following actual bear assault is one of the most horrifying in American history, involving a bear that severely mauled a man's face. This was dreadful bear attack on Chase Dellwo's. But what happened and why did the bear attack? This and other questions will be answered in the video. Welcome to Wild Assault. Given its extensive agricultural heritage, Chateau, a city in Montana, conjures up striking images of a green environment with various wildlife. Mule deer, wolves, badgers, squirrels, moose, elks, and bears, both black and grizzly, all coexist in this biota. This automatically makes the hotel a great victory ground for game hunting. And so it is no surprise that on October 3, 2015, 26-year-old Chase Dellwo and his brother, 30-year-old Shane, decided to head west to bind them to bow hunt elk. Growing up on a family ranch in Blackleaf, the two brothers were experienced big game hunters who preferred bows as their primary weapon. Saturday morning was chilly and the clock struck 8, indicating that it was October. Chateau was surrounded by dense cloud cover, with temperatures as low as 7 degrees Fahrenheit. The vile wind was full of snow, and each exhalation left a condensed cloud of air. This limited their vision to only 5 meters around them, but the prospect of a hot, sumptuous elk steak that the brothers would eat to the marrow of the last bone was enough to motivate them to brave the elements. Because of their limited visibility, hunting by stealth would be extremely difficult, so the two devised a strategy. They prepared and decided to separate. Shane, the older brother, planned to scale a ridge and wait while Chase led the elk herd to a creek bed. The ridge, Shane's ASIN, provided a clear aerial view of the creek bed, where he would assess one of the elks before taking it down. They had devised the perfect plan, free of flaws, or so they thought. Chase was meandering along the creek bed. The heavens opened up and rain began to fall. Just like a musical chime, it started as tapping as a drop hit his shoulders, but it quickly became a rattling pitter-patter, with more drops pouring with the snow, misty air, and now rain. With each step he took, the weather got worse. Given the flaws, he wondered if the hunt would be successful. A loud bugle, followed by a chuckle at the end, abruptly cut him off in his thoughts. He was familiar with that sound, having grown accustomed to it during his many hunting excursions. It was a bull elk. The elk was nearby, based on the source of the sound. In vain, his fiend mind tried to figure out where the bugle was coming from. The creek was covered in lush, soft grass that was beginning to bury itself beneath the falling snow. The scenery to the north and east of him was breathtaking, with rocky ridges and mountains partially covered in snow. And there was his brother, patiently waiting to strike on one of those ridges. Chase, armed with his bow, focused all of his senses on finding the elk. Nothing in the world could keep him from completing this mission, not even the droning music of running water from nearby streams that were about to freeze due to the cold. But before he could go any further, he was stopped in his tracks, motionless. Chase sniffed the air. The atmosphere had shifted. It smelled strange. A scent had entered his nostrils, one he hadn't smelled in a long time. It moved him strangely. If only he could see clearly for 1 mile, his eyes would have seen it. He reared up 3 steps behind, as if trying to slowly rest his haunches and sit like a trained dog, his bow raised to level his face, ready to release the arrow. But the bear leaped ahead of him, attacking him as if it had been waiting for this moment its entire life. This knocked him to the ground with a thud. The grizzly bear was enormous on its hind legs. It was taller than any human, with its shaggy, thick brown fur firmly planted on the wet, muddy ground. It appeared to carry the mysteries of nature with it. The bear then opened its massive mouth, grumbled, and sank its 3-inch fangs into Chase's left eye and skull, completely taking him by surprise. In nature, the hunter sometimes becomes the hunted. He had grown up on a family ranch and had been charged by lone bears. Not even once, despite his rich, expansive background, He had been unable to avoid this face-to-face encounter with a grizzly bear. If only the weather was nicer, Chase would have seen the bear from a distance and avoided it for a brief moment. The bear stopped attacking. Chase remained motionless and silent. "I'm bleeding and seriously injured." He felt helpless. He was aware that death was approaching from within. But the ordeal was far from over. The tenacious beast pinned him down with its clawed paws and let out another thunderous roar, as if announcing its dominance. It then took a step back and created an opportunity for Chase to sit up, but this proved to be a mistake as the bear attacked him again, biting him on the leg and shaking him bitterly before throwing him up into the air. He came crashing down, but the bear wasn't finished yet, as it went straight for his head. Before Chase, he saw his beautiful wife, Becca, waiting for him and his brother high up on the ridge, and he knew he'd met his fate on this mushy creek with a splatter of soft mud and snow. During this brief flashback, his memory came to his aid as he remembered an article his grandmother had once shown him about how animals, particularly bears, have sensitive bad gag reflexes on their soft balance. He mastered the little strength he had left and shoved his right arm into the bear's throat with all his might. Perplexed and befuddled, while gagging uncomfortably, the bear vanished into the snow. Chase knew it wouldn't be long before the bear came back to finish him off. Or worse, bleed to death. He needed to get moving. His camouflage hunting gear was ripped to shreds, and his palms were covered in blood and mud. He wiped the blood from his eyes. He chose flight over flight and sauntering through the creek beds, terrain in the direction of the ridge. He'd seen his brother take from the ridge. Shane saw his brother waving and assumed the cavalry had arrived. He positioned himself with his bow and arrow, ready to take the shot of his life. Shane realized his younger brother's dire situation after taking a second look at him, this time with greater acuity. He dashed down to him and administered first aid. He stopped the bleeding but was concerned about internal bleeding and had to rush to the hospital. He dashed to the car, gunned the engine, and pressed his foot hard on the gas pedal. The engine revved and the tires screeched as the rubber made contact with the tarmac, leaving a cloud of smoke in its wake. The air smelled strongly of burnt diesel and rubber. Within seconds, the speedometer was jerked to just over 100 miles per hour. Chase seemed to lose a decade with each breath during the 20-minute drive. Fortunately, they arrived just in time to save his life. After a 5.5-hour surgery chase, his face was covered in hundreds of stitches. When asked for his advice to anyone who wants to go hunting, he said they should never go alone.